The galaxy had always whispered about Earth. It was not the richest planet. It was not the most advanced. It did not control great star systems or endless resources. Yet, there was something about it that made every alien leader uneasy. Earth's people were unpredictable. They could laugh in the middle of battle. They could starve for days, fight with nothing, and still find the strength to win. The other species called them wild. The Galactic Council called them dangerous. And so, a decision was made not to destroy them, but to enslave them. The logic was simple. If you could chain humanity, you could control their fire. If you controlled their fire, you could control the galaxy. It began with the Enslavement Pact. Every major alien power signed it. The scaled Trinver, the cold-blooded Xyrith, the war-loving Varkon, even the cautious diplomats of the Violaran Concord. Their fleets were vast. Their weapons were older than human civilization itself. Against them, Earth had only a single planetary defense network and a few warships. At least, that was what the galaxy believed. The Pact's forces gathered at the edge of Sol System, war banners shining in the light of nearby stars. They sent one simple message to Earth's leaders: surrender, serve, survive. No reply came. The alien admirals took this as defiance, prepared to crush resistance in hours. Some even wagered on how long Earth would last. A Varkan general bet. It would be less than a single rotation of the planet. A Xyrith warlord laughed and claimed Earth's people would beg for mercy before the first bombardment hit their cities. But among the lower ranks, there were murmurs, stories, old rumors from traders who had visited Earth before the borders closed. They spoke of humans who could stare down death and smile. Soldiers who would fight with sticks and rocks if they had to. One merchant told a tale of a human who, when faced with an armed alien, simply said, "Do it. If you think you can," and the alien walked away without firing. The fleets moved in. Earth's blue oceans and green continents came into view. The alien armadas spread across the system like a steel net, ready to close around their prey. The first step was to take Mars as staging ground for the invasion. Yet, when the forward fleet reached the planet, they found something strange. The human colonies there were abandoned. Every structure was empty, every storage depot cleared. It was as if the people had vanished into the thin Martian air. The alien commanders dismissed it as a sign of panic, humans fleeing before the might of the Pact. But one captain, veteran of dozens of wars, felt a cold unease. Empty worlds rarely meant surrender. They meant preparation. Days passed. Alien fleets inched closer to Earth. They expected orbital defenses to activate. Desperate fighters to launch, politicians to send surrender signals. Instead, there was nothing. Earth was silent. No broadcasts. No distress calls. No visible movement on the surface. It was as though the planet was holding its breath. Then the disappearances began. It started small, single scout ship vanishing. On the far side of the moon, no distress beacon. No debris. Just gone. Then another, this time near Jupiter. The commanders blamed navigation errors, then sabotage, then each other. But as the days went on, more ships were lost. Always quietly. Always without warning. And always in places where human forces were supposed to be weak. One night cycle, a Varkan destroyer named Iron Fang sent a brief, broken transmission before going dark, heavy static, a sharp burst of noise, and then laughter. Not alien laughter. Human, cold, deliberate, and too close to the microphone. Every listening officer swore. The voice spoke a single word before the signal died. Soon, panic began to seep into the ranks. Some ships increased their patrols. Others shut down non-essential systems, hoping to avoid detection. The losses continued. By the end of the second week, an entire Varkan battle group had vanished. The last image they sent back was of their own bridge, with every crew member missing, their chairs still spinning, as if they had just stood up seconds before. Inside the council war room, voices rose in anger. Some demanded immediate bombardment of Earth from orbit. Others argued that something was wrong. This was not how humans were supposed to fight. The idea of retreat was laughed at, but not loudly. Even the most arrogant leaders felt a pressure in the air, an unseen hand tightening around them, on Earth itself. No one outside the military seemed to know what was happening. The cities were calm, the skies clear. But under the surface, deep, in bunkers and hidden hangars, the truth waited. For years, Earth had been listening, watching, preparing, and the alien fleets, in all their might, had walked straight into a trap, high above the planet, hidden in the shadow of its own moon. Something vast moved. Not a single ship, but many, black as the void, silent as death. They carried no running lights, no broadcast codes. Only one word was painted along their hulls. In bold human letters the aliens could not read, but would soon understand. The word was retribution, and still. The Varkhan were not used to fear. Were born into war, raised in the heat of battle, and taught from childhood that courage was the only path to honor. To them, humans were an amusing challenge, something to crush quickly before moving on to a real war. That arrogance made them the perfect choice to lead the first wave against Earth. The Varkhan High Admiral, Korth Vezra, promised the Council that he would bring Earth's leaders in chains within 1 week. His fleet was legendary, 60 war cruisers, 10 heavy carriers, and over 100 escort ships. Each one bristled with weapons powerful enough to split mountains. Against a planet like Earth, it was overkill, or so they thought. When the Varkhan entered Earth's outer defense zone, they followed the standard script. They broadcast warnings to surrender. They sent small patrols to disable satellites and communication arrays. They even dropped intimidation drones into the upper atmosphere to broadcast alien victory songs. For the first 2 days, everything was quiet. Too quiet. And then, on the 3rd day, the first ship vanished. It was the Fury's Claw, a mid-sized cruiser patrolling near the asteroid belt. One moment, its systems were normal. The next, it went dark. No alarms, no distress beacons. It's just gone from every scanner. A second ship, the Bloodcrest, was sent to investigate. It too vanished. Now, Admiral Vezra was no fool. He'd fought guerrilla fighters before. He knew this pattern. Small losses to test your response, to make you nervous. His instinct was to tighten the fleet, keep ships close together, and sweep forward. But the Council demanded speed, and so he obeyed. On the 5th day it happened. Again, this time, 3 ships disappeared at once. They were in visual range of each other, and yet not a single one managed to fire a shot or send a warning. It was as if they had been plucked from space by an invisible hand. The Varkhan crews began muttering in their private channels. Some spoke of human shadow ships, unseen but deadly. Others swore they heard whispers through their comm systems at night, voices speaking in human tones, saying things they could not understand. By the end of the week, panic spread like fire, and then came the transmission. It was not long, less than 10 seconds. A burst of static, then the sound of metal being torn apart, followed by laughter, not a recording, not an echo. Laughter from someone close to the microphone, deep, slow, and cold. Every Varkhan who heard it swore they could feel the human's eyes on them, as if the voice knew exactly who was listening. The transmission ended with a single word: soon. Admiral Vezra ordered full battle readiness. Patrols doubled. Weapons charged. No ship was allowed to travel alone, yet somehow the disappearances grew faster. On the 10th day, the entire 7th Assault Wing, 12 ships, went silent at the same moment. They were less than 30 seconds from reporting in, and then, nothing. When rescue craft arrived, they found the ships drifting, undamaged, but empty. Every crew member was gone, weapons untouched, engines running, meals still warm on tables. It was then the Varkhan finally understood they were not hunting humans. The humans were hunting them across the galaxy. The Council began to receive fragments of intelligence from deep space relays. None of it made sense. One report claimed human warships were moving without engines, drifting like shadows between stars, yet changing course at impossible speeds. Another claimed humans could board ships without triggering airlock sensors. A third insisted that some human soldiers wore no suits, walking in the void as if it were nothing.
Out.
But the results were undeniable. The strongest fleet in the pact was being erased. On the 12th day, Vestra made the only choice he thought could save his forces: retreat. He ordered the fleet to pull back to the edge of the system, regroup, and wait for reinforcements. But it was too late. The retreat became a slaughter. Human ships appeared where no ship should be, cutting through the Varkon lines with terrifying precision. They did not fire wildly. Every shot was deliberate, every target chosen to cripple command and control. And worst of all, the humans did not chase the fleeing ships. They'd let some go. The survivors realized the truth later. They had been allowed to live so they could carry a message back. When Vezra's shattered remnants limped out of the Sol system, they broadcast the warning to every packed species: Earth will not kneel. Earth will not be chained. If you go there, you will vanish. The council was furious. They demanded explanations. They accused the Varkan of incompetence. But behind closed doors, the leaders spoke in quieter voices. They had seen the data, the impossible maneuvers, the silent warships, the enemy that struck without being seen. Some began to suspect what none dared say aloud. Humanity had been ready for this war long before the first alien fleet had arrived, back on Earth. Deep inside a secure command bunker, a human admiral stood before a glowing tactical map. Red markers. Alien ships were disappearing one by one. Her officers reported success after success. She said nothing. Instead, she walked to the edge of the room, where a massive steel door stood locked. Beyond it, hidden from even her own staff, was the heart of Earth's plan, the thing no alien must ever see until the final blow. Far above, in the black silence of space, human ships drifted without lights. Their hulls bore no identification, only the same word painted in silent defiance: retribution. And for the first time in recorded history, the Varkon were afraid of the dark. In the shadowed chambers of the Galactic Council, the mood was heavier than it had been in decades. The defeat of the Varkan's first fleet was not just a loss, it was an insult. Never before had a member of the Pact been humiliated so completely. Yet no one could deny the facts. 60 warcruisers had entered the Sol system, and only 13 had come back. Worse still, those survivors spoke of things that defied reason. Human ships that appeared out of nowhere. Crew vanishing without combat, voices in the dark. The Council's military analysts tried to dismiss the stories as fear-driven hallucinations. But the cold data matched every claim. In an emergency session, the Council decided on a new plan. This time, there would be no overconfident commanders, no half measures. The next strike would be carried out with precision, secrecy, and overwhelming force. It would be a mission of intelligence, not brute strength. A Helleran stealth vessel, the Silent Dagger, was chosen to slip into Earth's orbit undetected and discover what the humans were hiding. The Hellerans were the galaxy's masters of covert operations. They could sneak into a war zone, steal enemy data, and be gone before anyone noticed. Their agents had brought down governments without ever firing a shot. If anyone could uncover Earth's secrets, it was them. The Silent Dagger entered the Sol system under the cover of a drifting asteroid. Its engines were powered down, its heat signature masked, every system tuned to blend into the void. For 2 days, it drifted toward Earth, scanning for signs of military buildup. The Helleran captain, Rethvaris, expected to find chaos cities. In ruins, desperate fleets trying to hold the skies, armies scrambling to defend their homeworld. Instead, what he found made no sense. Earth looked calm. Cities glowed with steady lights. Civilian ships moved along normal trade routes between the moon and the planet. There were no signs of panic, no mass evacuations. No fear. It was as if humanity had forgotten there was a war. Varus reported this strange calm back to the Council, who demanded he search deeper. So the Silent Dagger shifted its course, gliding into a higher orbit to scan the far side of the planet, and that was when the sensors detected something strange. At first, it looked like empty space, a patch of void, darker than the surrounding sky. But as the ship's systems enhanced the image, details began to emerge. Shapes, angles, massive hulls painted black from prow to stern, drifting silently in formation. There were dozens of them, maybe more, each as large as a council dreadnought, yet none of them emitted a single signal, no engine trails, no transponder codes. They were invisible to standard scans, and they were watching Earth. Varus stared at the display for a long moment before activating the ship's recorder. If he could bring this evidence back to the council, perhaps they could prepare for what was coming. But the moment his crew began transmitting the data, every system on the silent dagger went dark. Lights, engines, weapons, all of it. Crew shouted in alarm, rushing to restart the systems, but nothing responded. Then the comms crackled to life. A voice spoke. Not in the strange harmonics of the Viahelleran tongue, but in perfect, slow human English. You should have stayed away. The crew froze. Varus tried to respond, but the voice spoke again, quieter this time, almost a whisper. You see us now? That means you don't leave. A shadow passed across the ship's viewing ports. Was not the shadow of a planet, nor another vessel moving in front of the sun. This shadow moved with them, close, deliberate. Then the stars outside seemed to vanish as a massive black hole slid silently past, so close Varus could see the scorch marks of old battles along its armor. The name painted on the side was in bold human letters, Retribution. The silent daggers. Systems suddenly flared back to life, but the controls no longer responded to the crew. The ship was turning, descending toward the Black Fleet without any command from its pilot. Inside, the crew felt the temperature drop. The lights dimmed again, leaving only the faint glow of the control panels. And then one by one, the Viahellerans began to vanish from their stations, no flash, no noise, just gone, as if they had never been there. Varus was the last. He sat in his command chair, staring at the dark hole of the human ship outside. Just before the void swallowed him, he heard the voice again, now close enough to feel its breath. Operation Black Sky has begun. The silent dagger was later. Found drifting just beyond the orbit of Mars, no crew, no sign of struggle. The data logs were wiped clean, save for a single file and image of Earth, taken from orbit, with a black shadow hanging over half the planet. The file was labeled in human text, First Warning. When the council saw it, they finally began to understand. The humans were not just defending their world. They had been waiting, planning, and building something the galaxy had never seen before. Operation Black Sky was not a defensive strategy. It was a hunt. The galaxy had just stepped into the dark. The Galactic Council had expected fear to keep humans on their knees. Instead, it was the Council that began to fear the silence from Earth. 2 fleets had been destroyed without a proper battle. The Varkan's mighty first fleet had been erased. The Viahelleran's silent dagger had vanished into a ghost story. Yet still, no one could explain how. No human fleet had been seen launching from the surface. No large-scale planetary defenses had been detected. It was as if the planet itself had become a predator, waiting in the shadows. Then, without warning, the attacks began. It started at the far edge of the galaxy, in the Korath Belt, a mining zone far from any human colony. A Xyrath supply convoy drifted into the region expecting a routine pickup of ore. Instead, they found their escort ships missing. Moments later, human vessels emerged from the darkness. No engine flares, no warning signals. Just black shapes sliding through space like sharks in deep water. The humans struck fast, disabling engines and weapons with surgical precision. The convoy's captains tried to surrender, but their transmissions were jammed. Minutes, the convoy was gone. By the time the council heard about the attack, the same thing had already happened in 3 other sectors. Human fleets were everywhere, yet nowhere at the same time. They appeared without warning, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. But it wasn't just military targets. Humans began hitting supply lines, fuel depots, and communications relays. Entire sectors went dark overnight, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Panic spread quickly. Civilian worlds began receiving strange transmissions. At first, They were believed to be hacked council warnings. But when decoded, the truth made every listener's blood run cold. The messages were short, written in basic galactic trade speech so all species could understand. You chose war. We choose how it ends. The council gathered in an emergency meeting. Maps of the galaxy glowed red with the locations of recent human strikes. Every prediction model they ran ended in disaster. The humans were not moving in random attacks. They were cutting the pact into isolated pieces, making it impossible for its species to help one another. And the strangest thing? The humans never targeted civilian populations. They left cities untouched, but destroyed every military outpost and shipyard nearby. To the Council, it was a mystery. To humanity, it was a message. We could destroy you. But we're giving you a choice in the war room beneath Washington. DC Admiral Kara Holt watched the holographic map of the galaxy. Every glowing red mark represented a human strike in the last 48 hours. She didn't smile. She didn't relax. She knew this was only the beginning. Keep them scared, she ordered her fleet commanders. Fear is a weapon. We will. Use it until they break. Above alien worlds, human warships began broadcasting warnings before striking. The voices were calm, almost polite, but they carried an edge that no one could ignore. This is Earth. You have attacked us. You have enslaved our people. You have signed the pact. We are here to give you your last chance. Stand down or vanish. Many alien soldiers obeyed instantly. They powered down their weapons, abandoned their ships, and surrendered without a fight. But others resisted and paid the price. Footage began leaking of human boarding parties moving like shadows through alien corridors, cutting through defenses with frightening precision. One alien survivor swore the humans didn't even breathe heavily during the fight, as if war was something they were born to do. The Council tried to keep the truth hidden from the wider galaxy, but fear had already spread. Merchants refused to travel near human-controlled space. Mining guilds closed their operations in contested sectors. Even some member species of the Pact began sending secret messages to Earth, offering to turn against the Council in exchange for safety. Humanity was no longer a target. It was becoming the most feared power in the known galaxy. Then came the moment that Council could not ignore. In the middle of a high-security meeting in the Council's capital, the air in the chamber shimmered. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, not one of their own officials, but a human admiral in full battle uniform. The chamber's guards drew their weapons, but the hologram only smiled faintly. We know where you are. We know what you fear. This is your last warning, the voice said. You have one cycle to end the pact, or the pact ends tonight. Before the guards could trace the signal, the hologram vanished. But the message had already spread. Every alien leader in that chamber knew what the humans were saying. They weren't asking for peace. They were giving an ultimatum. That night, human fleets moved into position around 3 major packed homeworlds. The skies over those planets darkened as massive black warships blocked out the stars. No shots were fired. The fleets simply waited, silent and immovable. On the surface, civilians stared up in fear. They didn't know if they would live to see the next sunrise. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Council didn't know what to do. Every choice led to disaster. And as they hesitated, the humans waited patiently, like predators confident in their kill. Operation Black Sky was no longer a secret. It was in motion. Nothing in the galaxy could stop it now. The Galactic Council had survived wars before. They had seen empires rise and fall, rebellions crushed, and even entire species erased from the stars. But never had they faced an enemy like this. Humanity did not march on the Council's capital with banners and drums. They did not arrive in fleets that could be counted and tracked. Instead, they moved like a shadow spreading across the galaxy, unseen until it was already too late. For days after the ultimatum, the Council chambers were a fortress. Every wall was shielded, every corridor guarded, every access code changed, twice a cycle. Warships patrolled the skies above, scanning for any sign of human approach. But the Council's fear was not of fleets, it was of the unknown. They had no idea where the humans were or how they might strike. That uncertainty was worse than any visible threat. Then, during the third night after the warning, it happened. Council was in session. Circle of the galaxy's most powerful leaders gathered under the shimmering light of the central dome. They were arguing over whether to open negotiations with Earth or to launch a desperate counterattack. Voices rose, accusations flew, and the tension in the room was suffocating. And then, the lights flickered. It was only for a second, but when they returned, something had changed. In the center of the chamber, standing on the polished stone floor, was a human, not a hologram, not a projection. A real human in full combat armor, helmet under one arm, standing tall and calm as if he belonged there. The guards reacted instantly, drawing weapons, but the human only smiled faintly. "You made the wrong choice," he said in perfect galactic trade speech. "Now you will see the cost." Before anyone could respond, the massive doors to the chamber slammed shut. The sound of explosions rolled through the city above them. The council members froze as the walls of the chamber shook with the impact of orbital strikes. Somewhere far above, the human fleets had finally revealed themselves. The council's defense screens lit up with desperate reports. Entire shipyards were burning. Power grids were collapsing. Communications relays were gone. The humans had struck everywhere at once, a synchronized assault across dozens of systems. Every fleet the council sent to defend their worlds was cut off before it could even form up. The humans knew exactly where they would move and were already waiting. Inside the chamber, the human soldier took a slow step forward. "We gave you time to stop this war. You refused. Now there will be no more warnings." His voice was calm, almost quiet, but the weight of it was crushing. One counselor, a tall Viahelleran, tried to protest. We can still negotiate. Can the human cut him off with a glance? "You're too late." Above the capital, the sky turned black as the largest human warship any alien had ever seen descended into low orbit. Its hull was jagged and armored, its engines silent. Across its side in bold human script was a single word: retribution. The ship opened its bays, releasing hundreds of smaller craft that spread out over the city like a swarm. It did not fire indiscriminately. They moved with surgical precision, targeting military hubs, defense batteries, and command centers. The civilians below watched in terrified silence as the invaders bypassed them entirely, striking only at the heart of the council's power. Back in the chamber, alarms wailed. The counselors shouted orders into comms that no longer worked. The human soldier's earpiece crackled, and he tilted his head as if listening. Then he nodded once, looking directly at the council's chairperson. "It's done." "Done?" the chairperson demanded, her voice trembling. The soldier stepped closer until he stood only a few feet away. "Your fleets, your outposts, your armories, every place you could launch an attack from, they're gone, and this city is next." With that, he placed his helmet back on. A moment later, the walls behind him blew open, and more humans poured. In armored, armed, and moving with the speed and precision of predators, they surrounded the council table in seconds. The leaders of the galaxy, once untouchable, now sat trapped and powerless. The human soldier raised his weapon but did not fire. "You wanted Earth in chains?" he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Now you will live with the chains you forged. Only they will be around your throats." Above them, the capital's main defense tower exploded in a ball of fire, its fragments raining down over the city. The humans were not here to debate. They were here to end the war once and for all. When the final blast shook the chamber, the council's reign was over. Some leaders were taken prisoner. Others vanished in the chaos. The humans had not just broken their military. They had shattered their power, their control, their very belief that they were untouchable. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. The council had fallen. Earth was no longer the hunted. Humanity was now the hunter, and every species knew it. And somewhere, deep in the dark, the next phase of the human plan was already beginning. The galaxy had never been quiet like this. Normally, comm channels were filled with constant chatter, trade negotiations, military patrol reports, ship traffic updates. But now, after the fall of the council, there was only silence. Tire. Fleets were gone. Supply lines were broken. Every world once loyal to the council was left isolated, unsure of who was still an enemy and who was already kneeling before humanity, in the ruins of the council's capital. The air was heavy with smoke and the stench of burned metal. The great towers that had stood for centuries were now nothing but jagged spires stabbing up at the gray sky. Human troops moved through the streets, not as conquerors, but as a presence, calm, methodical, impossible to ignore. They didn't loot, they didn't torch the city. They simply dismantled the last remnants of the council's control, removing weapons, disabling relays, making sure no resistance could rise again. Commander Elias Drake, the same soldier who had walked into the council chamber, now stood at the balcony of what used to be the council's central command. His armor was scorched, and the edge of his visor still bore a streak of alien blood. Below him, the city stretched out in ruins, and beyond that, silence. No anti-air fire. No defense fleets. The council's voice had been erased. A transmission came through his helmet's comlink. Commander, a voice said, "The prison facilities are under human control. We've freed all political captives." Drake didn't answer immediately. He stared at the horizon for a long moment, thinking of the thousands who had been locked away simply for speaking against the council. Journalists, rebels, and ordinary civilians who had dared to question the orders of their rulers. How they were free. But freedom in this galaxy was fragile. "Tell them," Drake said finally, "that they owe nothing to Earth. Their freedom belongs to them, not to us." That was the difference between humans and the council. Council had built its empire on chains, economic chains, military chains, even psychological ones. Humanity had come to break them, not replace them. But the galaxy did not trust easily. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Earth would become the new council, ruling with an iron hand. Others whispered that humans would strip worlds of resources before leaving them to starve. Drake knew those fears were inevitable. The only way to kill them was to act differently from every conqueror that had come before. Back on Earth's flagship, Tribution Admiral Sarah Cortez was already drafting the next orders. She had been the architect of this war, the mind that had predicted every council move before they made it. But now she faced the hardest part: peace. Not the kind written in treaties, but the kind that could last. Her strategy was clear: dismantle the council's centralized control, restore local governance to each world, and make sure no single power could rise to dominate the galaxy again. It was the opposite of empire, and it was risky. Humans let go too soon, chaos would swallow entire systems. If they held on too long, they'd become exactly what they fought against. In the weeks that followed, human ships moved across the galaxy not as an occupying force, but as a storm passing through. They destroyed the council's weapon caches, cut down slave markets, and erased the debts that had kept dozens of species in economic bondage. On some worlds, people cheered. On others, they watched in cold silence, still waiting to see the price humanity would demand. Drake found himself walking through one of the largest alien slave pens ever discovered. The cages stretched for miles, each holding beings from different worlds. Some had been here so long they barely remembered their home. As the gates opened, they stepped out slowly, unsure if this was a trick. One small alien, barely waist-high to Drake, stopped and looked up at him. "Who do we serve now?" it asked in a trembling voice. Drake knelt so his visor was level. With its eyes, "No one," he said. "You don't serve anyone ever again." The word spread faster than any broadcast. Soon, entire planets began declaring themselves free states. Trade routes reopened under local control. Council's banners were burned on every world. And yet, humans never stayed longer than needed. They came, broke the chains, and left always moving. Always vanishing back into the dark between stars. But not everyone saw them as saviors. The surviving fragments of the Council's military went into hiding, swearing revenge. They whispered that humanity's mercy was a lie, that Earth would return with new demands when the galaxy was too weak to resist. Cortez knew they might try to rebuild. She also knew they would fail. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when provoked, and no one wanted to face that again. On the last day of the operation, Drake stood on a landing pad, watching the Retribution prepare to jump back to human space. The galaxy lay behind them, changed forever. He thought about the council leaders who had once demanded Earth's submission. Some were now prisoners awaiting trial, others were dead, none still held power. Cortez walked up beside him. "Over?" she said. Drake shook his head. "No, it's just different now. There'll always be someone who wants to rule over others. But at least now, they'll think twice before coming for Earth." The Retribution's engines flared, and the great ship rose into the sky. As it vanished into the void, there were no more chains left in the Council's former territory. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy breathed free air, and deep in the quiet darkness of space, humanity returned home, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as the storm that had come and gone, leaving a sky that would never look the same again.